I don't even know how to start this video. Welcome, my fellow wannabes. Welcome to my channel. Today we are doing another Foo in review. So yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it. This is a series where I'm going through every Foo Fighters album, every single one of their works as a whole. And I never said I was going in order, by the way, just so you know. I am going to be doing all of them, though. Everything that's available to me, like on streaming platforms and things like that, I'm going through it all. And I did step a little bit out of order. We started this whole thing with an EP, actually, and then the last one I did was a album review of The Color and the Shape. And I really liked both of those two things that I did before. So what I wanted to do was talk about an album that, since the last time I heard it, the last time I could remember, I didn't really care for this album. So I decided to go back through it and listen to it, and the album is One by One. Now this is, I believe, the third or the fourth album that came out by the Foo Fighters. You have the self-titled one, you have The Color and the Shape, you have There's Nothing Left to Lose, and then you have this one. Now, this album, One by One, I don't want to take away from the fact that a couple of the Foo Fighters' best songs are on this album, but sometimes the album itself just isn't that good, you know? I mean, let's get into it. Let's just get into it right now. So, the first three songs, you have All My Life, which is one of their best songs easily. You have Low, which is a pretty underrated song, I would say. You have It All, which is actually a really good song, probably one of my favorite Foo Fighters songs. And then you have Times Like These, which is also one of their Foo Fighters' best songs. After that, you lose me. You have Disenchanted Lullaby, followed by a bunch of songs that no one really knows or cares about. I don't really know why this album just doesn't really flow that well for me. I don't know. I love the Foo Fighters, I really do. And it's not to say that this isn't, probably really great rock. This is great rock music for, somebody out there, but this feels very off-brand for the Foo Fighters, aside from those first four songs. Now, you have Dave Grohl, which he seems kind of disconnected in this album with himself lyrically, to me anyways. I think, coming off of There's Nothing Left to Lose, that they won several Grammys for that record, I think you might somewhat get kind of lackadaisical, and I'm not calling them lazy, I'm not saying that's what happened, but it definitely shows on this album. I mean, you have something that's really, you put There's Nothing Left to Lose, and then you also put this album side by side. There's no comparison as to which one is a better album as a whole, in my opinion. I think it's There's Nothing Left to Lose. I think it's the better album. I don't want to completely hate on this album, and I do have to say that I was going to record this video much earlier and put it out much earlier, but I decided I want to listen to this a couple of more times before I came up with my final analysis. And actually, Have It All was a song I didn't really care for that much until I listened to it a few more times, spinning this album several more times, to try and get a good grip on the album and what it might mean to, what it might have meant to them and what it might mean to some people. I think Have It All was a saving grace for me. I really, really like that song. The rest of the songs, though, they don't really flow good together. Certain songs seem out of place, certain songs are just kind of annoying, borderline annoying. Certain songs feel too long, certain songs just don't really have that Foo Fighters feel to them. And, I think there's a reason why they only play one song off of this entire album, or two songs off of this entire album. I mean, there's All My Life and Times Like These are for sure their best songs off this album. And those are the ones that are constantly in rotation for, whenever they play live shows. Now, I'm a diehard Foo Fighters fan. They are my favorite band, but for whatever reason, this album is just completely disconnected for me. And it's not to say that there's not talent here on this record, because there's these bandmates, they click together, but this record, it sounds like they're just trying to do their job. There's not a lot of heart woven. There's not a lot of that hungry mentality of wanting to, make an impact. It feels like they just didn't really try that hard to make an impact with this entire album. And I mean, this is a very similar type of vibe for me as to what Echo's Silence, Patience, and Grace has. I mean, it's a very similar vibe. There's a few good songs off that album. Not necessarily a great album. as I said before, I don't want to like just destroy this album, because I do think there's good parts of it, and as I said, the musicians themselves are definitely talented. I just feel like the message is kind of muddled through whatever this thing is. And at the end of the day, the score that I give it, it's just average. I think it's just okay. You have a couple of good songs, but this isn't ever going to be, I mean, I honestly, I feel like people probably forget that this album even exists because of its relevance. And I mean, it's just okay. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to give it a 6.5. You know, as I realize this is a hugely biased passion project that is Foo in Review. And I try and be as fair as I can and come up with things to say about certain topics. But, I can't change how I feel on this particular album. I feel like I know so much about the Foo Fighters because I've watched them in interviews. I've watched them talk about the recording process. I've watched them, I've watched the documentary about their, coming to life as a band, and they don't really talk about this album that much. They talk about how it was kind of a difficult journey to make this album, and that's pretty much all they say. They say that like they really struggled, getting this album out, and really struggled with the creative process. The band was having some issues, I think. Things were going on. This is right around the time that Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf came out. There was times where, Dave Grohl even talks about he didn't even know if he wanted to do the Foo Fighters at that time. And that just kind of goes to show that all those things that were happening, it resonates on this album, because this is actually the second time over that they had to do this album. They had spent a bunch of money before trying to do a version of this album. They hated it. They made this version of the album in Dave's basement or something like that, and, it ended up giving them one of the best songs that they ever had. So, that's just my random factoids for you. I think it's pretty clear, I love things about the Foo Fighters. Obviously, if I got any of this information wrong that I just said, definitely let me know in the comments below if you're watching. It's not a bad album, but it's not great either. It's just okay. So what do you think of One by One? Do you like it? Do you think it's one of the Foo Fighters' best albums? Do you think it's one of their worst albums? Definitely let me know in the comments below. As always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, you can just wait right after this video and you can click to see more. And as always, I want to thank you for preparing yourselves for a plethora of hot takes and potentially unpopular opinions. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic.